Hello, welcome to another episode of Faith X Life, where we dissect how our faith intersects with our lives. So glad that you've joined us today. We are going over Sunday's message. On Sunday, we had the Associate Network Leader for the Northwest Ministry Network, Don Detrick, here ministering. And so in this, at the start of the message, and then I think it's actually in the audio file from Sunday, but Pastor talks about how influential Don Detrick was in pastor pursuing ordination. And, as much as he wanted to fight it in the beginning, Don Detrick was very instrumental in helping him to pursue that. So you can hear that brief story in the beginning of the message. But, Pastor's been talking about the gift of God. We started it early December, I think it was, when Pastor started. And Don Detrick continued with it on Sunday. And one of the things that he emphasized, or was kind of the theme for the whole thing, is that Jesus is the gift of God. And just how Pastor's been saying, like, because Jesus is a gift, and when we receive Jesus, we then become the gift to others. Don Detrick focused on the fact that Jesus was the gift of God. And one thing that he really emphasized was just how the law and the prophets, before Jesus, everything was centered around that. All of the Jewish religion, everything that they understood was based on what they had heard from the prophets and what they knew from the law of God. And when Jesus came, it was confusing a little bit from what he presented, because, Jesus' own words was that he didn't come to abolish the law, but he came to fulfill it. And yet there were things that he did that made, like the Pharisees, all the religious sects, like the religious groups, mad.
Right.
So it's like, how can the two coexist? How can the law and the prophets, how could Jesus come to make sure that the law was fulfilled, and still there be some elements where those who were upholding the law were mad, So I think that was something that Don Detrick, when he discussed it on Sunday, and the way that he put it, like we're going to talk about it, but it was so good. You're going to want to go back and listen.
Absolutely.
Come on. But so that was, let's talk about that, because that, I think even now, that's one of the biggest things is like, we're not legalistic, and yet there is a standard of holiness. Like what's the...
Well, you find it interesting that he didn't come to enforce the law. He didn't come to abolish it.
Right.
But he came to be the law. But what was interesting about what Don Detrick was saying was he's not a police officer that's waiting on the side of the road to pull you over. Okay. He's not looking to hold you to what the law is per se, but to bring understanding to what relationship is with him. And he came to fulfill the law.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is what the Pharisees couldn't understand was, why is he fulfilling the law? Because they felt like the law didn't need any more help than it already was.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I think like we can like live in that tension now, because there's like a security that we get from knowing restrictions and rules. And especially, I think one of the things that Jesus said was, like, you're holding on so tight to traditions that your traditions have nullified basically the gift, like the gift that he was. And because they were holding so tight to what they understood, and that was Don Detrick's first point, that the gift of God must be understood. And so when we try to look at Jesus through the lens of our tradition or through the lens of how we know things or experience things, I think that's where it's easy to rely on what we know or what we've how we've considered things instead of like pursuing the relationship, because Christianity, like religion wise, it's like a system. It's a structure of things. And so we can get so familiar with that aspect that we don't pursue the knowledge of Jesus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we don't see there need to be change in what we're doing. And so we're content to do rituals and traditions. It starts out with, well, that's all we've known, but then when we say it's all we've known, there's comfort in knowing what you've known than taking on something that is new.
Absolutely.
And something that is totally coming from a different direction.
Absolutely.
A direction that has nothing to do with the religious or traditional part, but has to do with what's in the heart.
Come on.
And that was something that he had mentioned in the point when he was talking about the woman at the well, and he referenced that she talked to him about tradition, but he was there for what was in her heart.
Come on.
And so, like, a lot of times is we judge people according to tradition. We judge people according to how ritualistic things are, instead of going to what is behind who they are.
Come on.
And what they're doing. And why are they doing it?
Right.
And really, really coming at it from the part that is seen clearly, because tradition gets messy, especially when you hold so fast to it that there's no understanding of what there's no clear visual of who someone is without it. So
that's good. Come on. And I think that's where it can get difficult or loose when people misinterpret, like looking at loving people through the heart of God and excusing behavior, or like allowing compromise in their own lives. And I think that's something that we have to look out for and watch for, because in the topic of grace and in that aspect can get muddied, because it's not this it's not license or permission to like behave off or behave in a way that's contrary. It is the acknowledgement, and that's why I think and Don Detrick brought it up too, about how Jesus said that all of the law and the prophets can be summed up in two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. And then the second, love your neighbor as yourself. And all of the commandments flowed out of that. So like you were saying, with the law and the prophets, it was more about behavior, like what you do.
Right.
And that's where the ritualistic aspect, the legalistic aspect can come in. Because like you said, God's not after what we do.
Right.
Because we can do the right thing and be wrong.
Come on.
But he's after our hearts in the matter. And so that's where I think that's where it's getting comfortable with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all the ones who were upset with Jesus, because they were content to do and not be in alignment. And if they had accepted Jesus or accepted what he came to bring, like they would have known, like it's not about the they wore those phylacteries or whatever, to show that they had the word of God on the outside, but it wasn't like Jesus was after what was on the inside. And that's the aspect of the gift, I think, that Jesus was. Right.
Well, and like he said, and he references with the woman at the well, but he also says it. It's also said in John 4, 10, where he says, if you only knew the gift that God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me and I would give you living water.
Come on.
It's that understanding that he presented himself as a gift to extract what was in your heart.
Come on.
And so it sometimes we have to ask ourselves the question, like, what's there? What's inside? What's in my heart? Yeah. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I here? And Don Detrick, he posed the questions, questions of purpose, and it's like sometimes we get caught because of we're creatures of habit that we don't ask the questions of why and what are we doing?
Right.
And, why am I here?
That's
and
good.
He brought so much understanding to the lives of the disciples and to a lot of people in that region in that time about who he was and about how you're supposed to look at things in your life.
Come on. That's right. And Pastor talked about last week the presentation and how when we look at Jesus, we understand how to present ourselves as a gift. And so going this week with Don Detrick in looking at Jesus as the gift of God was just huge. And he was saying how, like, some of the questions that are asked, like, if God is good, then why? Why did this happen? Or, why did God allow this? And, like, taking a step back to have a bigger view of God. And I think that's where we can sink into the legalistic aspect or the ritualistic aspect, is when we fail to have a bigger view of God. And even with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they would have said, and they did say several times, like, we are, Abraham's our father, this is our, and it was, but they still, their view of God was so limited that when God was there, he couldn't impact them, he couldn't influence them, beyond what they had, what their mind was locked in, because they didn't have a bigger view of God. So some of those times, like, we can be so narrow and fail to come back out and look at things the way that Jesus did or the way that God did. So we'll limit someone by their behavior or by what they're doing or not doing, and fail to do it the way Jesus did.
Well, and then look at his approach.
Come
on. When he came to this world, he came under the law to redeem those that were under the law.
Yeah, come on.
And if you think about how significant that is, he could have came as a king who essentially wrote the laws, but he would have been above the law. And so the approach was quite a bit different, but also harder, because he understood how he needed to come, but he also understood it wasn't how people were looking for him to come. People were looking for him to do away with the law, to say, look at me, I'm above. But in essence, he came as one of them, someone that which is true God fashion. And it's a good reminder for us that we can reach anyone from where we are, and it doesn't matter. And Jesus was a great example of, it doesn't matter the status that you come from. It matters about who you are, and what your message is and what you're saying.
Come on, that's good. And you can end here with this, but one of the questions that Don Detrick posed was, like, what am I doing? Which is a question of mission. And one of the things he said was that vocation, or like our jobs, is just an outlet to do ministry. And so when we look at where we come from, or what The Chosen recently came out with, was episode 8, I think, or episode 7 maybe, with the feeding of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and how that multiplied because it went through Jesus's hands, and what we can like do or think that we have available to us because of where we are, or our experience, or whatever it is. Like, it's an avenue, and God, anything filtered through the hands of God can multiply and become more than what we think it is. So you going to a job where it looks like you're not making a difference, or the people around you, no one's picking up what you're throwing down. Like those things, every time we filter our days, every time we filter our lives through the hands of Jesus, it will always be multiplied beyond what we can understand, or beyond what we can know. So just what you were saying with it, don't minimize where you're, what you think you're bringing, or, don't let where you're from minimize you, or where you are minimize, allow you to minimize yourself. But know that because you've given your life to the gift of God, and you are therefore a gift, means that there's nowhere that you can go without having an influence or impacting people, no matter what your history is.
Come on. Thanks for breaking that further down, because that's really excellent points.
Part B.
All right, you guys, that's all we have for you today. But go back and listen to his message. There was so much that he said. He even shared a great story about how a Bible that he had lost brought a witness to a woman and changed her family tree for the better.
Come on.
So good stuff. You don't want to miss it. Also, you don't want to miss worship night, February 19th.
Come on.
Be there. Be ready to worship God. We take time and just give him all the praise. We give him all the worship. And it's a really a time where we connect with God in a different way. We also have our mental health in the Bible seminar conference on the Saturday, the February the 25th.
That's it.
From 9 to 12.
Yeah, come on.
So be there, register. The link will be down there or up top. One of there. Register. We want you to be there. Tell your friends about it. Share this. Share it, like it, comment. We want to hear from you. If you have perspectives that you want to expound on, we want to hear from you.
Come on, yes, we do.
We love you guys. And thanks for watching another episode of Faith X Life, as we dissect how our faith intersects
with
in
our lives. See you next time.